Hi guys and welcome back to the Mighty Blues. My name is of course Cameron and welcome back today to another live stream. It is the player ratings. Crystal Palace 0, Everton 0 at Selhurst Park yesterday. As we said on the instant match reaction earlier on, a truly woeful game of football, a really poor result for Everton, a really poor performance, and generally just 90 minutes of our lives that we will never, ever, ever get back. And I said that on the instant match reaction, and I had a couple of comments saying, you know, Crystal Palace have won X amount of games at home this season, and Crystal Palace have won X amount of games since Roy Hodgson has been the manager and has come in as manager, and Everton haven't won away from home since October. What makes you think that Everton, should have been guaranteed to win, or what makes you think Everton were nailed on to win? That's not what I was saying. In fact, that's not what I was saying at all. The fact of the matter is Everton need to start winning games of football because the teams around us are winning games of football. And the fact that Everton didn't win this game of football yesterday means that it is a bad result. Not because we should have battered Crystal Palace, because we're so much better than Crystal Palace, and because we're amazing away from home, and because Crystal Palace are a woeful team, because none of those things are true. The fact that we should have won was because we needed to win, because we cannot keep not winning games of football when the teams around us are winning games of football. It's as simple as that. I don't know how many times I have to explain this. I don't know how many times I have to explain that getting a point away from home at the end of August when the teams around you in the relegation battle are winning is not a good point. Now, I get you could say a point is better than nothing, and it is, of course it is. A point yesterday, a draw yesterday is a much better result than if we'd have lost this game. I understand that. But that doesn't mean that, we should be sat here all smiles and happy and made up that we've got a point, because I'm not. Because if I'm being honest with you, a point for me was not enough, and a point for me won't be enough on Thursday, even though Newcastle have just absolutely wiped the floor with Tottenham Hotspur. It still won't be enough if Everton only get a point on Thursday. So, yeah, as I said, a poor result for me, a poor performance for me. Could have been worse, and I understand that, a point away from home generally isn't a bad result, and this point wouldn't necessarily have been an awful point if we'd been in October or November or even January, but at the end of April, when the teams around us are winning games of football and slowly starting to move away from us, it isn't a good point, especially when this game was there for the taking. And if it wasn't for an absolutely dreadful, a dreadful couple of decisions by a certain centre-back, or who was playing right-back, and if it also wasn't for a massive lack of quality going forward, then Everton could have won this game. And the fact that we didn't, for me, is hugely disappointing. Regardless of whether it was a decent point away from home, it wasn't a good point, because there's no such thing as a good point when you're in the position that Everton are in. Hernandez says it doesn't matter at all, we need points, absolutely. And Jordan Movie wearing what's happening, my mate, he says worried now, man, still doable, like got it, unfortunately. Give our all again Thursday, even though it's down to the players. Absolutely, mate. And listen, we move on now to Thursday, and Thursday will be hugely difficult. As I've just mentioned, Newcastle have just absolutely dispatched of Tottenham Hotspur 5-0 up in 20 minutes or whatever it was. Granted, it was at home, of course, but they've just shown exactly how good of a team that they are, and exactly how dominant they can be in games of football, especially in terms of their attacking players. And Everton have shown how not dominant we are in terms of our attacking players. But anyway, we'll deal with Thursday when we come to it. This is the play ratings. As I said, we have done the instant match reaction. If you haven't checked that out, please do so. This is the show where we give every player who featured in yesterday's game a rating between 1 and 10. 1, of course, being absolutely abysmal and 10 being unbelievable. Going to be a difficult one, this, because nothing really happened in the game, barring Mason Holgate's red card. But we'll get through it. In goal then, Jordan Pickford, I'm going to give him a 7. I don't think he did anything wrong. No, don't get me wrong, he didn't have an awful lot to do, which, again, isn't his fault, and he shouldn't necessarily be marked down on that basis, because that isn't his fault. I thought the bits that he had to deal with and that he should have dealt with, he dealt with absolutely fine. Wasn't really put under any massive amounts of pressure by Crystal Palace. Didn't really have to make any over the top overzealous saves or massive moments. He made a couple of saves that, again, as I said, you would expect him to make. Distribution was okay, a couple of good balls distributed at times, but as I said, a fairly quiet afternoon for Jordan. Not to his fault, but a fairly quiet afternoon. So he's getting a 7. Left back, Vitaly Mykolenko. I'm going to give him a 5. Listen, again, similarly to Jordan, not an awful lot to do in this game. Obviously, I felt that Crystal Palace's forwards were probably not on their best form, especially in terms of Eze and Elise. I feel like they maybe could have given more from a Palace point of view. Obviously Mykolenko didn't have a massive amount to deal with. He had a couple of moments where the ball fell to him in the first half and his passing was just atrocious, and there was a couple of moments where his positioning was atrocious as well. And as I said, fairly quiet, and maybe I'm being a little bit harsh, but I just think the moments he was on the ball or around the ball, he didn't impress me massively. And that's not a shock, because I genuinely just don't think he's a very good footballer, to be honest with you, and that isn't his fault, and it's not his fault that we're relying on him to play week in, week out. But yeah, again, no massive issues. I just don't think he was very good. Centre-backs then, James Tarkowski, going to give him a 6.5. Thought he was okay. Again, just, a bang average game, really. Didn't do anything wrong, didn't give anything away, didn't make any sort of mistake. There were a couple of half moments where balls were played over the top and they were miscontrolled. There was one in the first half where the ball was played over the top and Tarkowski and Keane were absolutely nowhere near. I think it was Eze, but Eze's touch wasn't great, and it ended up going through to Jordan Pickford. But again, I don't particularly think that's the fault of the centre-halves. I think that's probably the fault of the manager in picking two centre-halves with absolutely no pace and playing a high line. But yeah, thought he was okay. Didn't have an awful lot to do, dealt with what he needed to deal with. And yeah, same with Michael Keane. I'm going to give him a 6.5 as well. Similarly, not an awful lot to deal with. Couple of moments that he had to be alert for, and then he had to be aware of, and he dealt with them. But other than that, wasn't massively involved in the game at all. Mason Holgate at right back, he's getting a 1. I just think he's a complete liability, to be honest with you. I just think he's a complete liability. Why he was chosen is beyond me. He hasn't even been in the thinking of Sean Dyche once since Dyche has become the Everton manager, and all of a sudden he's starting a really important game for us. He ultimately, I'm not going to say was the reason we didn't win this game, because there's absolutely no guarantee that if he'd have stayed on the pitch, we'd have, A, gone for it in the last 20 minutes, and B, even if we would have gone for it, got anything out of it. But he didn't help the situation, because it became quite apparent when he was sent off that Everton couldn't go for that game, that Everton couldn't, ultimately go for the throat and try and get the win, because we were down to 10 men, and that was never going to be possible. So, yeah, I just don't see what the point of him is at the football club. I don't. I think he should have been sold years ago. The fact that he's still here is beyond me, and is one of the many reasons, not necessarily Mason Holgate, but keeping hold of players that have clearly got no future at the football club is one of the many reasons as to why we are in the position that we are today. And yesterday was a typical Mason Holgate performance. He does that all the time. When he comes in for the first time in a while, he's always got a ricket in him, whether it's giving away a penalty, whether it's getting sent off, whether it's, giving away a silly free kick, or whether it's a mistake that leads to a goal. He's always got a ricket in him, and we saw that again yesterday. Into the midfield then, James Garner. Gonna give him a 5. I thought he was okay in patches in the first half on the ball. Thought he moved it well a couple of times. Thought he picked it up well and moved it into space. But in the second half, I think he was completely absent. Can't remember him touching the ball once. Can't remember him being particularly involved once. And that's not just James Garner. That can be said for a lot of players in that Everton side. But specifically for Garner, I can't really remember him having much involvement in that second half, and and he wasn't massively involved in the first half. To be fair, he just had a couple of good bits of movement and a couple of good bits of ball work. But yeah, gonna give him a 5. Garner Gay, I'm gonna give him a 6. I think he was a little bit more involved. I think he was a little bit more active. I think he was trying a little bit more to sort of control the ball and get on the ball and try and control the game, and work it in the benefit of Everton. still wasn't massively involved, still didn't have a massive impact on the game, still didn't, deliver an outcome that, resulted in anything positive. But I think he was a little bit more involved than James Garner and a little bit more active, I suppose, in that second half. Dwight McNeil, going to give him a 4. Worked hard, ran round, battled, offered us nothing. Offered us absolutely nothing. And to be honest, again, I'm not going to sit here and slag Dwight McNeil off, because I actually think he's been our best player since Sean Dyche has come into the football club, and I think he's given the most, and I think he's battled the most, and I think he's improved the most. Yesterday he was poor, he wasn't involved, and if there was one game we really didn't need him to be poor in, it was yesterday, because of the return of Dominic Calvert-Lewin. We've seen Dwight McNeil put a number of really, really good balls into the box recently, whether it be head height, whether it be sort of flashed across the area, and we've never had that forward in there to get on the end of them. We've never had that player in there with the instinct to sort of take the gamble to try and get on the end of it. We had that yesterday in Dominic Calvert-Lewin, but unfortunately we didn't see that service from Dwight McNeil. So yeah, expect better. Not very good. Alex Iwobi, 3. Yeah, he had the best chance of the game, a shot from outside the box. Other than that, Alex Iwobi is one of the players that when James Tarkowski comes out in the media after the game and says we need more from our forward players, he is referring to Alex Iwobi and others. And it's right. We just don't get enough. We don't get enough from them. And Iwobi yesterday for me was completely absent. Completely absent. He had a shot, a couple of half chances, and he had that shot that was maybe unlucky. It was a good save, but it was a routine save. It was a save you'd expect most goalkeepers to make. But other than that, he offered absolutely nothing, and that's not good enough. Damari Gray, he's getting a 2, same. Offered absolutely nothing. More worryingly, he looked resigned to the fact that we weren't going to win that game. And he has the potential to change that, and yet he didn't look like he wanted to. He didn't look like he was interested. He didn't look like he could be bothered. His body language was off. His effort was off. His work rate was off. Just really, really, really poor. And I'll repeat what I said last week. If you don't want to play for this football club, if you can't be bothered giving it 110%, then just say to the manager in midweek, listen, I can't be arsed. And don't waste our time. But yeah. And then Dominic Calvert-Lewin, I'll give Dom a 6. I thought he was all right. I thought he worked hard, put himself about. A couple of half chances on the turn that he made for himself that, were never really going to threaten, but were probably a little bit unlucky. Yeah. For the first game back, good to get 90 minutes in him. I know some people will say he was shite, he didn't do nothing, he didn't create anything, but the players he's got around him are truly, truly, truly abysmal. So you've got to feel for him. But I thought he'd done okay. On to the subs then. Neil Mowbray, 2. What's the point? And Ben Godfrey can get a 5. I thought he was all right. When he come on. Yeah, there you go. They're the player ratings. As I said, for me, not a good point at all. At this point in the season, when teams around us are winning, there's simply no such thing as a good point. We needed to win that game, and it was there for the taking, and we didn't take it. And now Thursday night against the team that have just absolutely bladdered a fellow top 4 contender, fellow to them, of course, not fellow to Everton. We've got to go and beat them now. And as I said, I'll sit here on Thursday night and I will say the same thing. If Everton draw that game on Thursday night, I will say the same thing. It isn't good enough. Regardless of how good Newcastle have been, regardless of what they've done to Tottenham today, Everton need to win that game on Thursday night. It's as simple as that. Anyway, gonna leave it there then. If you have enjoyed it, please hit the like button. As I said, don't forget to check out the instant match reaction if you haven't already. Massive thank you all for watching, and we'll see you later.